Yeah, feeling good on a Wednesday.
Loud noises!
Welcome to episode 7 of Homer's Anonymous with me, Alex, your resident DC Homer.
I'm Sanjay, your resident broken down UCLA Homer.
And special guest, me, Chris Chmura, I guess resident Auburn Homer.
Yep, so we're just, Chris is our first of many guests we're going to have on the show. If you guys want to be guests on and you have free time, let me or Sanjay know, and we can sort out a time and date for you guys to come on and be on the show. So looking forward to it. Just a couple of rapid fire topics we've got for you today. We're going to start off with big news in the NBA over the last couple of days is Rajon Rondo moving in a big trade from the Celtics to the Dallas Mavericks. Sanjay, what do you think of this one?
I mean, I think it's hard not to be surprised by this, if I may be cynical for a minute. Members of the Celtics, as executives, have always looked out for each other. We had Kevin McHale gifting Garnett to Danny Ainge with the Celtics, helping them win a title and continue challenging. And now we have Rondo going for free to the Mavs to Rick Carlisle as a gift from Ainge. So, it's kind of hard to not hate on this. I think the Mavs made out like bandits. They paid below market price on Rondo, and even if he keeps performing below what we've come to expect from him, as injury prone, they've given up nothing of value for him.
I think, like you said, great point with the getting it for below market value. I mean, with the amount of really good point guards there are in the league right now, a couple of years ago, when Rondo was kind of at a peak, this would just be stealing. And honestly, his market value would have been a whole lot higher. I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavericks would have, or the Celtics would have tried to get Nowitzki from it, and Mavericks would have said absolutely not. But I mean, at this point, with like Kyle Lowry, John Wall, Kyrie Irving, all the great point guards who are out there right now, it makes this trade for the Mavericks so much better. And then on the flip side with the Celtics, I mean, they really have nothing besides maybe Marcus Smart. That's probably all they've got right now. And even him, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year or two they'd try to get him for something else as well. The one thing that they, I guess, do have going for them in the future is all the trades, all the draft picks that they got in that big trade with the Brooklyn Nets about 2 years ago. Moving forward, that can help them and kind of get some pieces in. But it's overall, I think the Mavericks really got a good one with this. I don't know how much it's really going to help them because obviously it's too early to tell, but the timing of the deal was really good because now this gives them a little bit more time to work with Rondo into the offense rather than getting a trade done in February and have very little time to try to make a run in the West, which obviously is the most difficult place to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the analysis of the Mavericks side of the trade is interesting. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. You go from having a team where Monte Ellis is your primary ball handler, which they've made that work really well this year. They've been one of the highest scoring offenses in the league, and a Monte Ellis and Tyson Chandler pick and roll or Monte Ellis and Dirk Nowitzki pick and roll has been a really lethal option for them this year. But you go from a team that's had Monte Ellis as their primary ball handler to giving the keys to the car over to Rajon Rondo, who's going to pretty much just run pick and rolls with any one of Nowitzki or Tyson Chandler, and he's got multiple other guys in that starting five who can hit open shots. Obviously, Chandler Parsons was their big free agent signing over the summer, and he started out well and helped them achieve so much already on offense. So, I mean, you know they're just going to, if not maintain this great level that they've had so far in the season, but improve on that level. There's very little chance that they're going to be a worse team after this trade. But I think the analysis is really interesting for the Celtics. Before this trade, the whole decision with Rondo, for me, kind of was part of a bigger decision that the Celtics executives kind of saw at like a fork in the road of like which way they're going to take this franchise in. Are they going to try and hold on to Rondo and trade some of these pieces and maybe try and get another All-Star in and maybe sneak into a 7 or an 8 seed in the East because you're always one move away from the playoffs in the East? Or were they going to try and get rid of Rondo and get some draft picks in to pair with those Brooklyn Nets draft picks that you talked about and just go full-on Philadelphia 76ers tanking? I mean, it was an interesting choice. I think they should have gone the other way. But, they've decided to build with Marcus Smart. They also got James Young, who's a promising wing player in the draft. Jeff Green as another piece. They're probably going to look to try and trade before the trade deadline and get even more draft picks because he is a player that can help push a playoff team like over the edge. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do, but I think this Rondo trade has way more implications for the future of the Celtics than it does for the future of the Mavericks.
I find it fascinating going back to what the Mavs paid, that they gave up less for Rajon Rondo than Houston got for Omer Asik and his obscene $15 million contract. Boston had a lot more chances to make this move, and I think by waiting so long, they got far less of a return than they could have gotten.
So do you think this makes the Mavericks contenders for the title? Do you think they're in that class with Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and the Clippers now?
Sure. I mean, I thought they were always, contenders. All the teams in the West are packed so close. I know we said before the season started, OKC, San Antonio, and the Clippers. But Houston and Golden State have shown themselves to be in that class as well. Memphis. And with Dallas, we have the top 7 that's just crazy. Now, any one of these teams could end up winning. They are so good. Any one of these teams would definitely be the winners of the East as well. So we're going to see 3 of the NBA's top 4 teams eliminated in the second round.
Yeah, I really think that this helps Dallas in the long run. Like I said earlier, doing the trade when they did it here in December, that really gives them a lot of growing room and kind of room for mistakes right now, so that by the time when we get to February and March, when it comes down to crunch time, they're not struggling to try to get into some sort of a rhythm. They're already in that rhythm. They can really work with what they have. So ultimately, I do think this helps them out. I don't know if I would say it makes them a title contender just yet. In that sense, I mean that I don't think that they'll get into the NBA Finals, but I wouldn't be too surprised if I saw them in the Western Conference Finals, just with the roster that they have, with the experience that the Mavericks have with Dirk Nowitzki and Tyson Chandler. That's really going to help them going forward and really help the younger guys and some of the guys who haven't been there. And even now with Rondo, he's been there before. He's got the title. He knows what it takes to do it. So ultimately, this will really help him out going forward.
And people forget how big of a contributor he was, not so much on that 2008 team that won the title, but on the 2010 team that pushed the Lakers to 7 games. I know they lost to the Lakers in 7 games, but he was a much better player in that 2010 team, and even the 2011 and 2012 teams that played against LeBron and the Miami Heat in the playoffs. Like he was a big contributor, and he was putting up triple-doubles or close to triple-doubles most of the nights. If he can recover from that huge injury he had that kept him out most of last season, then, I mean, the sky's the limit for this team, because when it comes to the terms of the spacing on the floor and Rondo driving and dishing to multiple shooters on the floor, that this sets that up for them perfectly. Also, they have a great pick-and-roll stopping tandem in Tyson Chandler and Rajon Rondo for when they're on the defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, the sky's the limit for this team. It's just going to play down to matchups that they get in the playoffs and a little bit of luck that you need to just get a break here and there and get into the NBA Finals.
Credit to Dallas, too. They tore down a championship team to pursue Deron Williams and Dwight Howard. And although they failed in that, they might somehow end up looking better, at least fit-wise, picking up Monte Ellis, getting Chandler Parsons in free agency, absolutely fleecing the Knicks for Tyson Chandler, and now with this pickup of Rondo, they're looking like all those pieces are going to fit together. And their biggest miss in all this might be the story that came out last week that they drafted Shane Larkin instead of Giannis Antetokounmpo, which, if that's your biggest mistake, that's not a franchise killer. They recovered really nicely.
So moving on to the NFL, we're coming down to the last 2 weeks of the season here. It's getting really close for clinching the last couple of playoff berths available. But one team that's really disappointed this year and made a big move that shocked a lot of people was the Chicago Bears. They benched Jay Cutler this week in favor of Notre Dame's own Jimmy Clausen. And Sanjay, I know you had particular beef with this move. Like, why do you think they did it?
I absolutely hated this move to bench Cutler. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but I completely buy that the only motivation to do this, let him sit on the bench for the final 2 games, is to protect him in case of a trade. Because Jimmy Clausen offers them absolutely nothing that Cutler can. Cutler is better in every way. They have nothing to discover by developing Clausen. We already know what he is. He's a below mediocre quarterback. He's not going to develop any further. It seems like they're just protecting Cutler to see if they can get anything on the market on him. Now we're hearing that they might even have to package a pick with him just to trade his massive contract. And I just think this is a huge mistake. If it's the front office, shame on them. They need to be getting the best product out there they can for the team, for their development, and for their fans. And if this is Mark Trestman thinking he's saving his job, he already deserves to lose it because he's not going to do any better with Jimmy Clausen than with Jay Cutler. Cutler hasn't maintained the pace he started the season with, but he's a fine quarterback. That offensive line is horrific. The defense hasn't done the offense any favors. He's doing what he can. He has good weapons, and he's worked well with them for the most part when he's been given a chance. But he has zero protection, and he's playing along with one of the worst defenses in football.
But then, why do you think they would try to trade him if evidently they have a terrible offensive line? I mean, Jay Cutler may have performed bad, but like you said, if his offensive line is bad, and then that's probably the biggest issue because they have one of the best receiving corps in the league. They have a top 5 running back in Matt Forte. They went to an NFC championship a couple seasons ago and were 1 game away from a Super Bowl. Why give up on this guy now?
Well, like I said, I think they're just completely mistaken and have misevaluated the situation. Clearly, they've invested incorrectly in their team, and this is just a continuation of it. Some teams just keep making poor decisions, and I think they're compounding it on it, giving up on, the face of the franchise, so to speak, and not sticking with what could be working. They need to place the blame on someone, and it looks like Cutler might be on the receiving end of this. And the team that gets him, they could be looking real good for next year, especially with the lack of quality quarterbacks in the NFL. The best free agent you might see this year is Mark Sanchez. If a team's smart, they'll get Jay Cutler, maybe a pick attached to him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Sanjay on this. It's definitely, I think this move is a short-sighted look at what has been going on this season. Yes, the season has not been going very well. Started off with a loss at home, and since then it's never really kind of picked up momentum. They were expecting a whole lot more, and understandably so when they've got the weapons that they do. But the fact of the matter is their offensive line hasn't given them much help. The defense, same thing. And it's really, this move is just very short-sighted. I understand, maybe if you're looking for this as, well, Clausen, let's get him some playing time and maybe get him in a trade or a free agency buyout or something like that. That would make sense in that case. But from what everyone is kind of saying, it's to move Cutler out. And at this point, what great quarterbacks are there out there? I mean, you've got Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, Joe Flacco. You've got quarterbacks in a lot of different situations that aren't going to be moving away. And then you basically have everyone else. Phillip Rivers is a nice piece out there in San Diego, and he can get the job done. He probably won't move either. Same thing with Eli Manning. I think they're too invested in him at this point. But for them to be giving up on Jay Cutler at this point, especially with the big contract that he just signed, it's very short-sighted. And there are going to be a lot of teams, I think, that will be kind of salivating over this. I've heard that from some ESPN places, like SVPN or Solo, for instance, that what market is there out there for this quarterback, and honestly, I think it's a pretty good one. Being a homer here for the Buffalo Bills, I mean, they know they're not going anywhere with Kyle Orton, and who knows what EJ Manuel can give them going forward. That hasn't shown very.
It's pretty inaccurate.
Yeah, he hasn't been as promising as they'd hoped him to be. So, I mean, I don't understand why they wouldn't at least try to make a run for him. Not saying they'll get him or they would be willing to give up a ton to get him, but there are teams out there who would want to be making that move. So ultimately, I think this is a poor move, poor choice by management of Chicago Bears, and very short-sighted.
I'm just blown away at how reactionary this is. Not exactly a completely similar case, but we've seen Tony Romo come up short time and time again in Dallas, and even Jerry Jones, one of the quickest guys to react and change things up, was patient enough to let Tony get it done, and now he's getting his results. Not even the Cowboys would have pulled a move like this.
Yeah, it's just a shame because, as you said earlier, the ownership is looking to place blame somewhere, and the first two to fall into blame every time is going to be the coach and the quarterback, and unfortunately for Cutler, he just happens to be in that position. It's really too bad for him.
I understand what you guys mean, and all signs point towards them trading Cutler, but at the same time, the guy's contract is huge. It's like $20 million a year or something like that, maybe like 16 or 17. To trade that contract, I just don't think it's doable. I don't think any team would be willing to give up what you needed to give up to take a $20 million contract. There's plenty of new quarterbacks coming out every year in the draft that a team would rather pick up than GMs would rather draft a quarterback, pick their guy, and have the job security to say we're going to develop this guy over the next 2 or 3 years than to make a big splash in the trade market and get a Jay Cutler, who's you're just going to bring a whole media circus to your franchise and probably do more harm than he is good. Chicago, like I said, they're not that far away from being a pretty good team. Like I said before, they've got 2 great receivers, Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall. They've got a decent tight end in Martellus Bennett, top 5 running back in Matt Forte. Obviously, the offensive line has some issues. If they get a high draft pick this year from this terrible record they've had, maybe they can trade down, get a couple more picks in the 2nd and 3rd rounds where you can find more quality offensive linemen and turn that offense into something that can put up 20 to 30 points a game. You need about 27 points a game to be a good offense. And you can get 2 or 3 touchdowns from Jay Cutler and 2 or 3 touchdowns from Matt Forte a game. That's not too much to ask for. And the defense itself, you got to build your defense off of a lot of lower draft picks, but just trying to find sleepers in those later rounds. It's perfectly doable. You can turn a franchise that has this much potential. You can turn it around in a year, and they really shouldn't give up on Jay Cutler because that would just be a awful mood.
I just think that's terribly optimistic to expect from a franchise that pulled this Cutler benching, that has invested this poorly in its offensive line and its defense to draft that well and to trade that well. I think more likely, even if they hold on to Cutler, is they'll keep falling back until they have to nuke the whole thing.
So with these last couple of weeks of the regular season coming up, we've got all these teams vying for playoff position, vying for a higher seed over their division foes, and trying to make sure they play home games. And one team that we haven't really addressed in these last couple of weeks or during our NFL preview was the Arizona Cardinals. They started out the season extremely well. Carson Palmer looked like a really promising quarterback. And even when he went down, Drew Stanton came in and filled in really well for him. But right when Carson Palmer came back, played a couple games, got injured again, was out for the season. Drew Stanton came in again, and once again, he got injured. And now they're left with a playoff berth, most likely, but with Ryan Lindley as their quarterback. So I guess we're just going to talk about what chances, if any, this team has in the playoffs.
I'd say none. But, you still have to look at their season and be impressed. Andre Ellington now is on the IR as well. They've been through a lot. They lost 5 starters from their incredible defense from last year, but Bruce Arians has shown no matter what he's given to work with, he can make something out of it. He did a great job filling in for Chuck Pagano in Indy, and now last year going 10-6 and missing the playoffs, and this year with already 11 wins and a chance to clinch home field with the win on Sunday, he's done an incredible job. He has to be the coach of the year. It seems like no matter who they plug in, they even ran Logan Thomas for a while. They're going to be okay, but I think there is so much talent in the NFC. When you go up against Aaron Rodgers, when you go up against Russell Wilson and the Seahawks defense, Marshawn Lynch, there's too much to fight through. Even the Lions could be a tough ask of the Cardinals to beat at home. So credit to them for being the first NFC team to clinch a playoff berth, and good luck to them, but I just can't see them getting too far.
Yeah, their defense has really shown all year that they're one to be reckoned with. They just have great speed, great coverage ability, great tackling. It's just with all the injuries that they've had on defense, that hurts obviously. And then on offense, anyone who's going with their third string quarterback is going to have real struggles, and it's great for them. At this point in the season, they may want to think of just resting their guys, maybe try to get another win under their belt to at least lock up the division and get home field advantage. But I ultimately think that this team is not going to go very far as of this year. Now, I will say that moving forward, I think this could be a real big help for them because they're getting guys who usually might not get plenty of playing time now. So it could help them going forward, so that if like a Carson Palmer were to go down again, they've got the guys to back them up. Backup running backs getting experience, linebackers, defensive tackles, all those positions getting the experience moving forward. That can definitely help. But as for this year, I think great job for getting to the playoffs. I got a friend of mine who's a big Arizona Cardinals fan, and I'm really happy for him, but I just don't see him going very far in the playoffs.
So of the locks in each of the conferences, which teams do you guys like? I know for the NFC, let's say the locks are Green Bay, Arizona obviously have the berth. Detroit most likely they're at about 10-5. No, I think they're at 9-4 or something right now. They're pretty much equal with Green Bay, and whoever wins their Week 17 matchup is pretty much going to get the higher, is going to win the division, and the other's going to go and play an away playoff game. Then Dallas pretty much has the NFC East locked up.
Seattle, that's who I like too.
Seattle looks like the other wild card, along with the NFC North loser. So who do you guys like to go represent the NFC in the Super Bowl?
I still like Seattle. Told you on the last pod. Now they're at 7-1 in their last 8 games, and they're playing like the repeat champs that we all know and a lot of teams fear. Russell Wilson, at worst, can manage games spectacularly. He's come up with big-time plays every time on third down, on fourth down. He's so reliable. They've done a good job of managing Marshawn Lynch's carries, so he's still getting the workload, but they can hand it off to Robert Turbin or Christian Michael when necessary. The receivers, not big-name guys, but having Doug Baldwin step up, Jermaine Kearse, Cooper Helfett even, and Luke Wilson becoming part of that offense. Everyone on the team is so reliable, and the defense has finally gotten back to their Super Bowl level. I think they're getting hot at the right time, which has proven time and time again what you need to do in the NFL going to the playoffs. The other team I keep an eye on is Green Bay, but I think Seattle still has their number.
I'm with you on that with Seattle. I think they're kind of the obvious choice. And I'll say 2 as kind of backups, if you will. First, Green Bay. They are more so, where do they end up playing their games? They've shown throughout the year they're perfect at home. And when they play at home, they are near impossible to beat. The Patriots got the closest. And, they gave a really good game there. But everyone else, they seem to just blow out. They're on another level at home. But then when they're on the road, it's a completely different team. I believe they're 3-4 on the road this year. They just had a tough loss to Buffalo at Buffalo. A lot of mistakes in that game that usually don't happen. A lot of drops, including a big Jordy Nelson one that really could have turned the tides of that game. So if Green Bay plays at home in the playoffs, I'm really confident with them, even going against Seattle. But if they're on the road, I don't see them going too far. The other team in that, I would feel a little bit cautious of Dallas. Dallas has looked really good all year long, with the exception of a couple things here and there. Their biggest issue, though, is their defense. They've got the offense. They've got Romo. DeMarco Murray has been playing well all season long. Des Bryant has been playing very well. Jason Witten's been there. Offensive line has been the best Romo has probably ever played with. It's just, what can the defense do? Can the defense step up and make the plays when they need to? Because some of the mistakes that they've gotten away with here or there against some of the lesser opponents, it's not going to happen in the playoffs. So I'm really interested to see what they can do moving forward. But ultimately, I think my pick for the NFC would be Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, you like the consistency that Dallas has shown, but they have come out and they have had a couple of those stinkers. That Thanksgiving Day game against the Eagles kind of rings a bell. I know they went into Philadelphia and they stomped them a couple of weeks afterwards, but I mean, they are one of those teams that has the potential to fall apart on you, just like any classic Tony Romo team does. But so I'm not completely willing to pick them to, make the plays necessary in the final 2 minutes of a game. I know what you guys mean also about Seattle, but the dearth of playmakers on offense really worries me. Like, you can't say you're afraid of their offense, Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much stop Marshawn Lynch and put enough pressure on Russell Wilson and just make him beat you, which, I mean, I know he has shown he can do that, but I'm not scared of him like I am of an Aaron Rodgers or a Tony Romo, even if you put a lot of pressure on him and leave guys necessarily uncovered. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sold on Seattle. The team I talked about earlier this season that I'm interested in is Detroit. Detroit is a hungry franchise. They haven't won anything the past 40 years or something like that. For the first time in a long time in their history, this franchise has a guy at quarterback they really believe in Matt Stafford. They've got, obviously, Calvin Johnson. Megatron hasn't had that great of a season, but he's getting healthy at the right time. And they're getting to play their best football right when it matters most, which is something you can't say of Arizona and something you can't say as much about the Dallas Cowboys. So it'll be interesting to see if they can somehow beat out Green Bay for home field. And that could set them up to possibly get to the Super Bowl. They're still a dark horse team for me that I would be really, really interested to see them playing their best football up against Seattle and Green Bay and those other teams of the NFC.
Going back to what you said, though, about Green Bay, along with what Chris said, too, I think one matchup to look out for, with Green Bay not being the best road team, is potentially a Green Bay at Arizona game. I think that's one Green Bay would really enjoy if they have to play on the road, going up against Ryan Lindley in Arizona. That's a game I would feel comfortable picking Green Bay to win. The problem with Green Bay in the playoffs is with them, if it's not one thing, it's another. When their defense was solid, their running game was bad. For years, we've seen them with horrible options like Dorsey Levens, Amon Green, Brandon Jackson, Ryan Grant, guys who could at times get the job done, but never in the playoffs, never when it mattered in big games. Seems like they plugged that hole with Eddie Lacy, who has fit incredibly into the offense and given them a complete different gear. But on the other side of that ball, that defense has gotten very questionable. It was a force to be reckoned with Clay Matthews, with A.J. Hawk, Tramon Williams, and Charles Woodson. Now they've lost him. Green Bay with their defense, now that's the big question mark with them. They've been pretty weak and have given up a lot to elite quarterbacks. I consider Russell Wilson in that group. Russell Wilson, Tony Romo, even Matt Stafford could absolutely tear that defense apart. So I'm not impressed with them. It's going to be completely on Rodgers and Lacy to win them games. I know I picked them as favorites earlier, but now Seattle is really looking like the team to beat to me.
Yeah, we'll see when it comes down to it. But any team like Green Bay that has the pass rushing weapons like a Clay Matthews, like Julius Peppers, who's I from what I've seen has played really really well this year compared to how he was playing the last couple of years with Chicago. But so anytime you have guys who can rush the passer like that, they can bring it up a notch and really elevate their play in the playoffs. And I don't know, I just wouldn't count them out from being a solid defense that can get stops when they need to.
To slight disagreement with that, I wasn't impressed with them either in the Monday night game against Atlanta at home. They had a huge lead that Rodgers gave them, and they almost completely blew it. They can't close out a game. And against an Atlanta team that has been a complete disappointment and even a bit of an embarrassment this year, they got absolutely torched and almost lost a 3-touchdown lead at the end of a game.
Moving on to the AFC, we've got a pretty much more disheveled AFC playoff race. It's not really going to be clear which teams are going through and which teams are going home until pretty much the end of Week 17. So, I mean, the locks so far are definitely New England, who are probably going to be that 1 seed. Denver Broncos are obviously going to be hunting for that 1 seed, probably will settle in the 2. In the AFC North, we've got a big what's the word I'm looking for? Logjam. In the AFC North, we've got a big logjam between 3 teams. My Baltimore Ravens, who we look pretty much set matchup-wise to make it into the playoffs, but you never know. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a tough matchup against Kansas City, and another tough matchup with the third team, Cincinnati Bengals. So probably 2 of those 3 teams are going to make it into the playoffs. And finally, the Colts have the AFC South pretty much wrapped up. So out of those basically locks, what do you guys think? Do you think which one of those teams would you pick to go to the Super Bowl?
I still like Denver. Peyton Manning is showing a little bit of cause for concern the way he's playing. If you just look at his stats. And his throws haven't been as perfect as they were earlier in the season, but I think people are making too much of things. The defense has gone out and won them some games. They've actually shown another dimension in their offense now, being able to hand it off to C.J. Anderson very reliably. So if Peyton doesn't have to win a game for them, it doesn't matter. They just want to go out and win. By having those guys he can throw to, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, even Welker, who stepped it up a bit in recent weeks. We've even seen Julius Thomas' role scaled down now, not just because of his injury, but because less need. If they can go to the running game, milk the clock some more, keep their defense fresh, why not do that? John Fox, as a coach, has never had an interest in just playing one way. He just wants to win the game. And if that involves Peyton handing the ball off 30 times and it gets them the win, that's how Denver's going to play.
I hear what you're saying with Denver, but I'm going to have to disagree, and it's going to kill me to say this too, because I think the Patriots are going to be my pick. I know you don't. I understand that you don't like it, and trust me, I don't like it either. Being a Bills fan, I really hate saying it, but I don't see too much of a weakness with them. They've got a solid defense with a pretty darn good secondary, and I think the most impressive thing to me has been what they've been able to do against the elite quarterbacks in this league. When week to week you're having to go against Andrew Luck, Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers, Peyton Manning, quarterback upon quarterback who can beat you and who can really put pressure on your defense and put pressure on Brady to perform. That's a tough gauntlet, and they went through all of it. I still can't believe that way back in, week 4, that they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs on the Monday night game or the Sunday night game, whatever it was, and people were saying, Brady's going to be traded. How we ever came to that, I still have no idea, because he is
ESPN.
Just ridiculous. But their offense is really humming at this point in the season. They still, for whatever reason, they can make any running back work on that, whether it be Jonas Gray or LeGarrette Blount or whoever it might be. Their receivers, although not the standout guys with Rob Gronkowski there, that's something where he's a reliable target. Now I will say, because of his fragility, more or less, over the last couple of years, that might be an issue. If he gets hurt, then I'm probably reverse that and go with somebody else. But for right now, I'm sticking with the Patriots as my pick for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Patriots are. I'm going to say the Patriots are a surprise to me only because you looked at their schedule going after that Kansas City game. They had a pretty easy run of games, which helped them get back on track and pretty much quiet all the doubters. But then they went through an absolute gauntlet of teams, like you said, like Detroit. They played against Green Bay. I know they lost to Green Bay, but they beat the Broncos. They played a lot of very, very tough games and came out on top and have one of the best records in the league regardless. But you know who they haven't played? Joe Flacco and the Baltimore Ravens.
Stop it.
No. I'm not even joking. Okay. Kansas City Chiefs was the last convincing loss they have, right?
Until this week at the Texans.
No, I'm talking about the Patriots.
Oh,
the Kansas City Chiefs was the last very convincing loss the Patriots suffered, right? Kansas City Chiefs are a team built off of quarterback play that you try not to make any mistakes. You know, you have good, solid quarterback play. Don't make mistakes. Keep your offense in a position to succeed.
Sure, they haven't thrown a touchdown pass to a receiver in over a year.
Okay, true, but hear me out. There's offense is built on that good, solid quarterback play and an outstanding running game that keeps Tom Brady off the field, keeps them from making big play after big play and running up the score. Guess who's top 5 in the league in rushing this year and has 2 running backs who have run for multiple touchdowns in more than one game? The Baltimore Ravens. We have an experienced quarterback in Joe Flacco who isn't going to make mistakes against the Patriots. We have solid receivers who have been here before. Torrey Smith's won a Super Bowl before. Steve Smith is out to come and bully you and take your lunch money. We've got consistent tight end play from Owen Daniels. We have, like I said, the best running game, one of the best running games in the league. We can keep Tom Brady off the field. We can go up to Foxborough. We've done it before. We can kick their ass and come out of that stadium with a win. And I'm calling it right now. The Patriots will go to the Super Bowl unless they play my Ravens. Then we will beat their asses.
I just want everyone to keep this segment and listen to it over and over again.
After the Ravens win and go to the Super Bowl.
After the Steelers and Bengals make it to the playoffs and the Ravens are watching them.
No, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're going to be okay.
You know what the funny thing is? There's a very likely potential that 3 of the AFC North teams make it.
I mean, I think that Cincinnati team is really overrated. I think they're set up to lose in the first round, no matter what happens.
The one thing I will say, going back to your point about the convincing loss to the Chiefs and for the Patriots, that is, one of the biggest issues, or two of the biggest issues the Patriots had early in the season was their defense was still trying to get used to it. They had a couple new players come in. They were trying to get used to the system. But I think the biggest part of it was the surprise trade at the beginning of the year of Logan Mankins away from the team. That was like the rock of their offensive line. And taking a guy who had been with Brady for so long during his career and then shipping him out kind of last minute, that hurts an offensive line. And it takes a little while for an offensive line to be able to gel, to really know what they're doing, to understand what the quarterback is trying to do. So that was where the early season struggles came on, and I know Belichick, for kind of the jerk that he is, he's a really, really good coach. You can't deny that. And the fact that he was able to basically turn this team around from, are they even going to make the playoffs? Are they going to trade Tom Brady to, now they've locked up the division for, what was it, the 12th time in 13 years, or whatever ridiculous number it is. I like what they're doing right now, and they've basically need to win this week, and they've got the lock for the division.
Sure, and credit, like you were saying, credit to Belichick too for the return in the Mankins trade, getting Tim right, and they worked him well into the offensive game plan. He's given them another quality red zone threat. We know how much the Patriots love going with those 2 tight end sets.
I think just coming back to the whole Patriots playoff potential, how they're going to do in the playoffs. I think you guys are right about that. They're perfectly set up and they're built to beat these teams like Denver because the Patriots have really loaded up on corner. They've got great corners. Obviously, Darrell Rivas he's not been the standout corner he was in his Jets days, but he's still really plays at a very, very high level. And they've got plenty of depth in the secondary. And obviously, Tom Brady has made all of his receivers look very, very good. And their running backs have looked good in their more spread kind of offense. But I'm just going to say it again. The Ravens are their kryptonite. We are their kryptonite. If you ask anyone in New England, the fans, the players, the executives, if you ask Bill Belichick, who is the one team they wouldn't want to play in the playoffs, that is the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not saying we're guaranteed to beat them because we do have our own secondary issues that Tom Brady could he could rip us apart. He really could. But we have one of the best pass rushes in the league that it can sometimes make our secondary look mediocre and not terrible. So, I mean, I would really give us a chance to beat them. Probably I would give us more of a chance than the Broncos to beat the Patriots because we're built to do it and none of those teams are built to do it. That being said, would you guys absolutely pick the Patriots to win the AFC?
No, my pick's still Denver.
Still Denver?
I'm going New England.
I'm going to go. I mean, it's really hard to pick someone just because, like I said, the matchups come into it. But if New England gets home field and ends up playing Denver in like the AFC Championship game, I'd have to go New England over Denver. Brady's just better than Manning in those playoff games. I know Manning beat him last time, but I just feel he's starting to unravel a little bit down the stretch of this season, and Brady's getting sharper as it gets closer.
So still no love from any of us for Andrew Luck and the Colts?
I was actually about to get to them. Just on a quick note with them, I think they're about a year away. Luck is still learning the position in the NFL. He's a great quarterback, and he's going to be one of the top names for years to come, and almost already is now.
Leading fantasy scorer this year.
True that.
Yeah.
But I think their biggest issue right now is their defense. I don't think they're experienced enough, or they don't have the players to be able to do it. They've got pretty decent receivers. They need a little bit of help with the running game, but ultimately, I think they're a year away from being stellar and almost at Patriot level.
Yeah, I think that's a great take from you. I think the defense is still the question mark with them. I can't believe I'm saying this, but losing Ahmad Bradshaw really hurt that team. He gave them something else to work with. He was a fairly reliable running back, both carrying it and out of the backfield catching passes from Luck. And like you said, you made an excellent point, Chris, with Luck still being the one guy, even though he's an elite quarterback, who'll make occasional mistakes that the other quarterbacks don't. We see him a couple times every year in one of those plays where as he's getting sacked, will throw the ball, and more often than not, it'll find a defender's hands. And those are the mistakes you don't see Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning making for the most part. So you're right, maybe next year, if they keep Bradshaw or find a reliable running back, if they can add in one more threat. I know Colby Fleener, Dwayne Allen have emerged as options for him. They need one more reliable guy to catch the ball for him to go along with T.Y. Hilton. They'll be in really good shape.
To go quickly on your point about Andrew Luck making the mistakes that he does, I almost have no problem with that. He's one of the really aggressive quarterbacks. We saw it with Brett Favre for years. He now leads the NFL career in interceptions, but we don't consider him to be a bum as a quarterback. He just plays really aggressive, throws it into tight windows, tries to get his receivers the ball.
Just ballsy.
He's just really He's just really ballsy. So
he can't help it. He's got balls.
I think it does hurt them. But what I love, going back to the Cleveland game, I know it's Cleveland. They're still they're struggling a little bit. But Luck in that game had a pick six and a fumble recovery in the end zone. That he had fumbled the ball. Cleveland recovered it. And he never stopped throwing the ball. He kept going at the defense, kept trying to bring it downfield, brought them downfield, and got the game-winning touchdown. That's the one thing I will always love Andrew Luck for. He is never afraid to throw the ball. And yes, Brady and Rodgers don't make the mistakes that he does, but I don't think that they're nearly as aggressive as Andrew Luck is. And it will hurt him in some situations, but will also really help him going forward in his career.
Yeah, he's got that Joe Flacco X factor. He's not scared.
Always back to the Raiders.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to the playoffs. It's going to be really, really interesting. Not only these last couple weeks to see who makes it in and is peaking at their top performance going into the playoffs, but just seeing what matchups unfold once we get to late December and January.
This is a great time to be a fan, too. With 4 games a weekend and 8 great teams going at it, we get to see the best that football has to offer in some incredible matchups that just have the heat they don't have in the regular season. The Super Bowl, if we see a rematch of that incredible Patriots-Packers game, for instance, it'll be 10 times better for us having seen that game once already. Looking back at that perfect Patriots team that dropped their last game a few years ago to the Giants, or they beat the Giants and lost last game in the Super Bowl. We got to see that matchup. The Giants blew a lead in that game, got to know them a lot better, and beat the Patriots with a perfect game plan in the Super Bowl. So we'll see a lot of teams react like that if we see a rematch from the regular season.
So moving on to Champions League football, we just saw a couple days ago the draws were made for the round of 16 of the start of the elimination section of the Champions League. We'll start off with Sanjay's favorite team, Man City, is going to be playing Barcelona with the first leg coming at the Etihad in England, and then they'll go over to Barcelona to the Camp Nou to close things out. How do you think they're going to do?
I think, sadly, we'll see the same end result as last year with Barca taking it.
You got to have some faith.
I know you're surprising us because you actually picked Manchester City, I believe. I think City is still, I hate that we keep using this expression, a year or two away. They lack the experience that is so incredibly valuable in this tournament. With Barca having won it, even though they're in a transitional phase right now and working some new players and phasing out guys like Xavi, no more Carlos Puyol, Barca is too good to be losing to a team like City. Manuel Pellegrini has done a good job with Manchester City, but he's still shown he's made mistakes both with them and with Malaga in the Champions League. And squad selection is still a problem with him too. We keep seeing Martin Deschamps thrown out and failing to perform in big games. That is huge against a team like Barcelona. And I think with both the experience and, to be honest, the talent advantage that Barca has, they should be winning this one.
I think you sell Man City short. You got to look at the matchups for this one. You're overhyping Barcelona, first of all. Obviously, you look at their front three with Messi, Neymar, Suarez, and 6 or 7 weeks from now, when these two teams play, obviously they're going to be in a better position than they are now. That's fine. I can understand why you would be afraid of them. But Barcelona, they're not as good as you think they are, because where their weakness lies is in their midfield right now. And that's where Man City's strength is absolutely shining through recently. Man City have the players to absolutely dominate Barcelona in midfield. That may sound ridiculous with Barcelona having Xavi, Iniesta, Ivan Rakitic has obviously been a great addition for them. But this is more of a strategic thing that they haven't really employed that much this year, but they could, and it would be interesting to see how it works, is if they employed Yaya Touré, Fernandinho, and Fernando, they're 3 defensive-minded midfielders who have the ability to go forward and attack. Those 3 could absolutely just cause havoc in the midfield. They would break up possession left and right and maybe catch Barcelona out of position to counterattack very quickly and nick a goal here or there. I mean, where the weaknesses lie for Man City is, like you said, their center-back pairing hasn't been shored up yet. They really need to get Joaquim Mangala on track. He's had good games, he's had bad games for them. But you can tell he's got the ability to play. He just needs to figure out what kind of playing style he's going to take playing next to Vincent Kompany. If they get their defense shored up in these next couple of weeks, I think it's about a month and a half until the first leg is played, then I could see them really upsetting Barcelona. Obviously, they need at least a 1-0 result from this first leg. Going in, you can't go into Camp Nou down a goal. You need some kind of advantage. If they can sneak a goal at home, maybe even 2. They have the strikers when Sergio Aguero is back, and Edin Dzeko hopefully is playing a little bit better. maybe they can sneak a goal at the Etihad and go in and get a 1-1 draw at Camp Nou. It's very possible, and I would not be surprised if they could pull it off.
Sure, I see what you're saying, that this is not the same Barcelona unbeatable team of years past, but at the same time, we've seen them do it recently, down 2 goals to weak squads such as Milan and a stronger one such as PSG, and come back and win that return leg comfortably. At the end of the day, I think that experience is so valuable. Having a guy who can just turn around a game like Messi, surrounded by talent like Iniesta, like Xavi, like Luis Suarez, like Ivan Rakitic, they have too much going for them. Their goalkeeping situation is even better this year. And who knows, on the other hand, City may be focused still on the Premier League now that it looks like there's a good chance they could at least challenge for it when it was thought to be Chelsea's for the taking. I just don't think Manchester City is up for it this year as much as it kills me to say it.
I was actually going to make the same point. I'm really not sure where Pellegrini's mind is with regards to what are you thinking about with the Champions League? Like you said, I don't know what he's thinking about with now the Premier League. You know, he may be thinking, now we got a shot, let's keep going, and we're going to win this. And maybe a domestic title as well. But, you know, managing in the Champions League is very different than managing in your own league table. Because in your own league, you're playing against some low-class teams. But Champions League, it's the best of the best of the best. And so being able to prepare for it, get your players ready, get the formations right, putting the right matchups out there. Not sure where his mind is, so we'll see. I think because this leg will finish at Camp Nou, I think Barcelona is going to move on. If it would finish at the Etihad, I might have said Man City, but I'm going to go with Barcelona here.
Yeah, I'd say to add one last point. I don't think expectations are exceptionally high on Manchester City, given how they started the group to come away with a win against Bayern on Sergio Aguero's incredible game, to win against Roma away, to clinch advancing to the knockout stage. I think they have to be happy with how they've done. That can't be a long-term thing for City. They need to start advancing past the knockout stage, which they failed to do yet. But I think this year, I'd have to say their sights are probably still on Premier League first and foremost.
Man City, they have a big opportunity here. I understand what you guys mean, of like they have a chance to contend for the Premier League title and everything. But if you're a club like Manchester City and you've had almost like $1 billion pumped into the club, you have all the resources that any of these other teams like a Barcelona, a Bayern Munich, a Real Madrid has, and you want to be taken seriously, you want to be considered a contender for the Champions League and not just the Premier League, you have a chance to go out and beat one of the premier and most historic clubs in Europe and in the world. Beating a club like Barcelona doesn't just mean going through to the next round. It means showing other players in the transfer market, this is a serious club, and we have serious aspirations of not only just winning the Premier League, which obviously is a great feat in and of itself, but they've achieved that. And once you've achieved that, you want to move on and you want to challenge in Europe, because what does any player want to do? They have the resources and they have the players to play in both competitions. We've seen Chelsea do it. I know we're currently rivals right now, but Manchester City's rise is very, very much similar to Chelsea's. Chelsea, we were bought by Roman Abramovich in 2003, and the year before that, we had just qualified for the Champions League for the first time. That first season in the Champions League, we beat Arsenal, a team that had gone undefeated in Premier League play that year, and we went to the Champions League semi-final. The next year was the first year with Jose Mourinho. We won the Premier League, and we went to the Champions League semi-final again, and we lost barely on a goal that never should have counted to Liverpool. When we had very much the aspirations and the quality to go and win both competitions. And every year since then, Chelsea has challenged for the Champions League and even won it one year. We may not have won the league, but doing well consistently, it can be done in the Champions League. And teams like Chelsea, like Bayern Munich, like Barcelona and Real Madrid have proven that it can be done. Man City have the resources, they have the players. This is a chance to make a statement and say we are serious about both competitions.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you. It's an incredible chance. And in a way, maybe you do want a tougher first round of the knockout stage opponent like Barca to make your statement. However, I don't think that any players are going to be looking at City and considering them and say, well, they weren't able to beat Barca, so we're not going there. At the end of the day, money talks a lot, as it did in the case of Chelsea and as it will in the case of City. City's got the money to spend, and that can make up for some of the differences and lack of performance. We're not talking about a middle-of-the-table club. We're talking about a team that is now a perennial title contender and now has made it to the knockout stage in back-to-back years. Someone has to lose in the knockout stages.
I don't want to interrupt you, but
Go for it.
But what's the difference then between Manchester City and, say, like Arsenal? Arsenal, they do well in the Champions League every year, but then they lose to Bayern Munich or they lose to Barcelona. Well, are you saying you're a similar club to Arsenal? Because
Absolutely
you're not.
I think the difference is, like you said, City has shown ambition. City is showing willingness to grow. But I don't think any of that is going to make a difference in the result. The talent is already there. And with this squad as currently formed, I don't think they're going to be the ones to knock off Barca. I don't think Barca is going to get that far either. I think they'll probably get knocked out in the next round as well. But I think for this matchup, it's just too much to ask of City to be expected to win. Could they pull off an upset over both legs? Perhaps, but they'd have to build a massive lead, and I just can't see them doing that, even at the Etihad.
I'm going to have more faith in your team than you do. I'm going to say they win 2-1 on aggregate. They win the first game 1-0 at home, and they go into Barca and they eke out a 1-1 draw, and they go through the next round. Because I actually do believe that this City team wants to make a mark in Europe.
Like I said, I'm sure they want to make a mark, but whether they'll be able to do so this year or not, we'll have to agree to disagree, as fun as this has been, and move on to the next one.
The next game was one of the more difficult draws that my boys Chelsea could have got, but Chelsea are going to be playing Paris Saint-Germain in the first knockout round of the Champions League. It's similar to last year's tie with PSG, where we were going to go and play at the Parc des Princes in the first game and finish the second leg at Stamford Bridge. I'm fairly confident in our ability to win this game. It's obviously a very, very difficult matchup. PSG are another club that have really committed themselves to. They've gone all in and they've said we want to compete in Europe and hopefully win a Champions League. But Chelsea, we've only gotten better since we played them last year. Their form has been good in the Champions League, but they haven't been nearly as impressive as they were last year. So I would pick us to win this draw maybe 3-1. Maybe hopefully get a 1-1 draw at PSG, get our away goal, and handle them at home 2-0. We have completely improved from top to bottom, with obviously Diego Costa has come in and given more oomph to the striking position. He'll give David Luiz, our good old friend that we sold to PSG last year, he'll give David Luiz fits. Obviously, we've added Cesc Fabregas as a more calm and stable force in the midfield. And another player that people forget that we didn't have for the Champions League last year was Nemanja Matic, after he moved in January and was cup-tied for playing at Benfica in the same year. So the fact that we could beat PSG without two of our best central midfield players, as well as Thibaut Courtois, who we've added over the summer, I don't see. Obviously, PSG could come out and play some of their best football and beat us, but I think we need to be the favorites in this match, and we need to assert our dominance over a team that's slightly below us in talent.
Yeah, I agree with that. The play from the strikers has been great. Eden Hazard has really stepped up after a fairly slow start to the season. He's really picked up his play, gotten a couple of goals, really set up some great play upfield. Obviously, Thibaut Courtois has been awesome in goal. Struggling here and there, trying to get used to the new club, new style of play. Although, what sort of things can you do from the goalkeeper position? But he's been a big add. And somebody else who was added in that Atletico buy was Felipe Luis, and he's really come on. Didn't really get a whole lot of playing time at the beginning of the season, but now has seen a lot more time and has really proven his worth If nothing else, he gives some of the other guys who may be playing more in league ties a little bit of rest, so that when they come around to Champions League matchups, they're able to go against someone like PSG. I'm gonna go agree with Alex on this and say it's a 3-1, 3-1 aggregate. Chelsea favored, about the same thing. It'd be really ideal to get a goal at PSG just to make sure you got that away goal for you. But I ultimately see Chelsea moving on.
Yeah, Felipe Luis, like you said, he didn't play much near the beginning of the year, but he is very much a world-class center back. He played for the Atletico team that beat Barcelona in the semifinals last year and beat them to the league trophy. And he was the left back who pretty much handled Lionel Messi.
Didn't they beat Chelsea in the semifinal?
They did beat Chelsea in the semifinal. Yes.
Sorry,
and he was a big reason for that. He's an excellent player, and he gives us a left back now that Ashley Cole has left, who can stretch the defense further, like even wider, because he has very good crossing ability. Whereas with Cesar Azpilicueta, as good as he is more of a natural right back. He's right-footed. That's his preferred position. But he was pushed over to the left while Branislav Ivanovic had the right back position locked down. But with those three, Chelsea have three world-class center backs that we can rotate easily because we're currently in 4 competitions and in contention to win 4 trophies. So you're going to see none of them benched or have any lack of playing time. They're all going to get a chance to show how good of players they are and help support the attack going forward, as good as they all are doing.
The one thing I'll slightly disagree with is I think you guys might be underselling, the project going on at PSG. They've had another year to gel, added a few more quality pieces, David Luiz being one of them. But at the end of the day, Chelsea is just a much better team in both talent and how they play together. And I do think they should be winning this by something like that 3-1 margin, at worst 3-2. I don't think it's even going to come down to away goals. They might easily win both legs.
I mean, actually, a lot of Chelsea fans either they're going two ways with this matchup. Some of them are scared and really, really fear PSG's attacking options because they do have Zlatan, who's 33, but he's still a very, very good player, but has just been injured for the most part of this early season. So he obviously poses a huge threat. Edinson Cavani hasn't been at his peak form since he's been at PSG, but obviously represents a very, very talented player who can score as many goals against us as he did when we played against Napoli back in 2012. But where this game's going to be won and lost is in the midfield, where it's basically going to be between Matic, Fabregas, and Oscar playing in the center of the park against Blaise Matuidi, Verratti, and whether they pick Yohan Cabaye as their midfielder, they have plenty of options to go with in this. With Lucas Moura, the young Brazilian player, sometimes they play him on the wing, but sometimes they bring him into the attacking midfield position. It's going to be really interesting to see who wins that battle. And though I think it'll be difficult for us, I think we have the better players going forward and defending once we lose the ball to win that matchup. So quickly running over the rest of the matchups in this round of the Champions League. First is Porto against Basel. I personally have Porto beating Basel. I know Basel are a very, very good team who have done notoriously well against English opposition. They beat Liverpool this year in the Champions League. They've beaten Spurs in European. They've even beaten Chelsea a couple of years ago in the Champions League in group matches. So they're a very, very good team that shouldn't be underrated. But Porto have just conquered all in front of them this year. They've been absolutely excellent, and I don't expect that to stop this round.
Yeah, I look forward to the showcase of one of my favorite players, Jackson Martinez, who's an absolute killer up top for Porto. I think you should see him probably score a goal or two in this whole tie.
Yeah, and Basel, they've done a great job, obviously, getting to this point, but Porto's been here, they've done this, so I think they're going to move on fairly easily. I would say 3-1.
I would love for Chelsea to play either one of these teams in the next round. The next game is going to be Arsene Wenger and his Arsenal team returning to his former club, Monaco, who were the one team that we didn't select during our last podcast to be in this round.
Yeah, we both had Zenit.
We picked Zenit St. Petersburg over Monaco, and Monaco came out and played very, very well in their last two matches and find themselves with not an easy draw with Arsenal, but I think it's actually pretty winnable for them.
Yeah, stylistically, they should have a decent chance at this. I still can't believe I'm going to go ahead and pick Arsenal here. And it's really just a contest to lose to one of the bigger squads, almost, it seems, in the quarterfinals. But I think with Arsenal's Premier League season essentially done, they're going to put a lot of work into this matchup.
I mean, this... obviously, there's, like I've said before, there's about 6 or 7 weeks before these games even happen, so a lot can change between now and then. Arsenal are a team that have been ravaged by injuries like they are almost every single year. So, I mean, who knows which players are back and playing in better form by then and which players have re-injured themselves. So, I mean, we'll probably revisit this, but assuming Arsenal are healthy, you have to pick them, but you just don't know if there's going to be a big injury to Olivier Giroud or Aaron Ramsey, the kind of players who pretty much make or break Arsenal's squad.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see who they don't end up buying in the January transfer window as well.
They really need a defensive midfielder. I've talked with my friend who's a big Arsenal fan about this, and Arsenal fans are all absolutely livid that they get someone with experience playing defensive midfield over this January transfer window. Because if not, they're just going to see themselves absolutely swept off the park like they were against Stoke a couple weeks ago.
I think I'm going to go the other way here and go with Monaco. When you got guys like Jean Moutinho and Berbatov kind of getting that attack going, I think it's going to be a big help for them moving forward. Arsenal, I mean, as you pointed to, their Premier League season is pretty much done at this point, so they're going to try to do what they can in the Champions League to move on to the next round. But I think Monaco is performing really well within League One and could give them a pretty good fight. I think it will be a pretty close matchup, and I'm going to probably go 2-1, maybe 3-2 in favor of Monaco.
Moving on, we've got perennial Champions League favorites and former champions. Bayern Munich are going to be playing Shakhtar Donetsk. This matchup, I know on paper, it looks like Bayern are absolutely going to sweep Shakhtar off the park, but it could have been actually a pretty interesting matchup if this conflict in eastern Russia hadn't been going on and hadn't forced Shakhtar out of their home in Donetsk. They've been moved further east in the country and have been playing at a neutral stadium, but been playing most of their home games there. It hasn't affected them in the Champions League, as you can see, since they've gotten through this round, but that home field advantage for them was actually very, very significant. They fleeced Chelsea a couple of times when we went out to Donetsk and played there. They beat us 3-0 and 2-0 a couple of times, and it really is a big home field advantage for them. But without that, I could see Bayern winning this one handily, maybe 5-2 or 5-1.
Yeah, I mean, Bayern Munich is a team that has two options at every position. They can throw out whoever they want out there. In ties like this, they'll still win comfortably. But I still think, Shakhtar has always been a fun team to watch in Champions League. They have a couple guys like Douglas Costa and Alex Teixeira. You still expect to move on to bigger squads. So it should be a fun matchup. They'll be playing all out. They'll definitely be playing a positive game trying to win. And Bayern should be taking it comfortably, but I don't think this is the worst of matchups that this round has to offer.
Yeah, I think Bayern's pretty much going to blow them out of the water, to be frank. I'm not even going to go too much into this, partially because I don't know Shakhtar all that much, and partially just because I know Bayern is heavy favorites to move on and win the whole thing. So I'm going to go, honestly, 6-0, maybe 6-1 as the aggregate.
Moving on to the aforementioned, probably the easiest game or matchup to predict is going to be Real Madrid, the Champions League holders, playing against Schalke, who they beat handily last year, scoring a total of 9 goals against, with Cristiano Ronaldo getting 4 of those. So, do we need to really address this one? Because I just
wanted to make a Shock of the World pun, but
oh god!
Short of that, I think that Real Madrid is going to win this comfortably and move on as well.
I think Real's going to score 8 easy.
I think the biggest storyline in this one is how how big of a lead Cristiano Ronaldo can get over Lionel Messi in the highest Champions League scorer of all time race, because they've both been gunning for that title, and now Ronaldo has a chance to face a team that he's shown he can score against easily, and a team that just gave up 6 goals to Chelsea when we played them. So, Real will be winning that one and moving on to the next round. And then finally, the last 2 ties that I think are 2 of the most interesting ties that you probably shouldn't bet money on, because you just have no idea who's going to win. First one is going to be Juventus over Borussia against Borussia Dortmund, who've been disappointing, like we said, in the Bundesliga, but have played their best soccer in Europe, and they might match up well with a Juve team that likes to sit back and sort of absorb pressure, and they've proven to be able to break down teams that do that.
Honestly, Dortmund might be playing the best Champions League soccer we've seen this year, and I know I've been getting unreasonably excited about this, but they could be the team to win Champions League and get relegated in the same year.
It's not going to happen.
I'm so excited for this.
It's not going to happen. There's too many good teams.
But this is really a good one to look forward to. There's so many outstanding players. These teams are well managed, and they're about on the same skill level, more or less. They play a little bit different styles. I think it's going to be so fun to watch how both these games go. I think they could go quite differently, leg 1 and leg 2, regardless of the score. We'll see very different game plans at both ends.
Yeah, Juventus, looking at it from their point of view, this is a chance for them to get a win over a side that's struggling this year. I know Dortmund have played well in the Champions League, but we saw them slip up against Arsenal in the away leg of their group game against Arsenal, and they've shown signs of weakness. And Juventus are a team that they're tired of hearing that they can win the Italian league, but no one will take them seriously in Europe. They have good players. They have players like Carlos Tevez and Fernando Llorente. They have an excellent midfield with Andrea Pirlo, who's won the Champions League before, and the young Paul Pogba, who's one of the best young midfielders, who won Best Young Player at the World Cup this past summer.
Arturo Vidal, too.
Yeah, Arturo Vidal. Their center midfield is as good as any of the contenders for this tournament. This matchup with Dortmund is an opportunity for Juventus to finally break through and win an elimination matchup in the Champions League. For the first time in a while, they've consistently gotten out of their group, but they've always seemed to be matched up with the wrong team, maybe with one of the upper echelons of the European teams. This opportunity is really big for them to get through to the next round and instill some confidence in themselves. They definitely have the players. They have guys like Carlos Tevez and Fernando Llorente up front. Carlos Tevez has even said himself this is one of his best seasons. They have a midfield featuring Arturo Vidal, Andrea Pirlo, and Paul Pogba, who can dominate possession and go forward just as well as any other midfield in Europe. And then finally, going to the back of their formation, they've got Giorgio Chiellini, Andrea Barzagli, Leonardo Bonucci. They've got Italian internationals who have played well and played together for a long, long time. They really just need to take this opportunity to reach their potential. And maybe they can even pull off an upset in the next round against one of the better teams like a Bayern or someone.
I still see Dortmund going through.
No, oh my gosh, really?
They even without Lewandowski, they work together too well. They lack, and we covered this in the last podcast, a reliable option like Lewandowski. They still got that trio up top going with Ramos, with Ciro Immobile, Aubameyang, but their midfield is so nice. They've got Marco Reus hurt now, but pushing up the wings with Kuba, they have Subotic at back. They have Mats Hummels, Lucas Piszczek. That's a really nice team too. I think they play so comfortably in Champions League. They're a team that just imposed their will on the game through Jurgen Klopp. I still don't discount them. They're the runners-up from a year and a half ago now, and they'll be looking to make something to stave their season, as horrific as it's gone in the Bundesliga. I think they'll advance, and I wouldn't be surprised. You mentioned last podcast you liked them too, and this is a tough style matchup for them maybe. I wouldn't be surprised, like you said.
This is a nightmare matchup.
To see them in the semifinals, though, if they advance.
I think this matchup is a nightmare stylistically for them because they're going to hold on to the ball, they're going to possess, pass it around easily, they're going to feel good about themselves. Then they're going to finally push into the final third. Boom. Juventus will take it off them, go down the field, 2 or 3 quick passes, and a nice releasing pass from Andrea Pirlo, and they're down 1-0. And those kind of goals are the hardest to give up because you feel you're on the front foot, you have the ball at your feet, you feel like you're dominating possession and beating the other team. Then all of a sudden you look up at the scoreboard and you're down 1-0. And I just think Juventus, they're built to do this. They're built to take advantage of a team like Dortmund, who haven't even been playing that well consistently. So I think this one's going to end maybe 3-1 Juventus.
So you think Dortmund gets sent home and then get relegated as well?
No, I think they'll pick it up in the league eventually. They need to get out of Europe as quickly as possible and get their act together in the league because they need to get mid-table at least.
Yeah, you two basically taking everything. I mean, I don't know the matchups nearly as well as you. It's fine. I mean, I don't need to repeat a whole lot. I'm going to go with a little bit of a twist here. I'm going to go Juventus, but I'm going to say on penalties. I'm kind of hoping it doesn't get to that, but it wouldn't surprise me if it gets to penalties and Juventus moves on.
The final matchup, which is another one that you wouldn't exactly bet a ton of money on, but it's going to be interesting for the neutrals nonetheless, is going to be Atletico Madrid against Bayer Leverkusen. Bayer Leverkusen were one of my favorite teams to watch going throughout the group stages. I talked about them at length in the last podcast, but Atletico Madrid are a more polished, talented, experienced version of what Bayer Leverkusen bring to the table, and I think they should win a very, very close but exciting matchup.
So being more exposed to Atletico's games this year and over the past season, I'm fairly comfortable with saying they're a great squad that should be advancing. But, after what you said with Leverkusen in the podcast, I looked into them more, and they could give a team like Atletico Madrid, some real fits. That being said, I have so much faith in Diego Simeone and that squad that they've moved past the loss of Costa, Felipe Luis, and Thibaut Courtois, their 3 best players from last season. And still with Koke working the ball, with Mario Mandzukic has been an incredible buy, an incredible fit in that squad. I think they'll move forward, not by a comfortable margin, but I think they'll probably win both legs, maybe by a goal. If not, at worst, draw one of them. And the question is who they draw in the quarterfinals if they do advance. Pretty much anyone left would be a tough matchup for them. Their squad isn't as talented as last year, and they're not playing as well as last year. They put together an incredible season both domestically and in the Champions League. So I think, if they advance past this round, it's a success. It was asking a lot for them to match what they did last year, but I do think they'll be making it to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Atletico here. A lot of really great players, as you said, Mandzukic. Turan is still there. He can still produce pretty well. I think it will be fairly close, but I'm really thinking that Atletico is going to take this 2-0.
So if you listen to our last Champions League podcast, like we said, we got pretty much all of these teams except for Monaco right. So you'd be wise to listen to us and pick the same ones we just did. So thanks for listening to this week's podcast. Thanks to Chris for being on and giving a little bit of extra input. It's really good to have him on and have another opinion on here. If any of you guys want to be on the podcast, text or call Sanjay or I and let us know if you want to be on. And thanks. And
Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, thanks. Bye. We have no followers. Bye.